Thank you, Sabrina. Welcome to the show. I am so happy to have this opportunity to get to know you on a deeper level. When you filled out your participant form and you asked us, well, I'll talk about any one of these pivots, Sydney and I were like, oh, this is so fascinating. I want to talk about all of them.
Yeah, we couldn't narrow it down. And so for the listeners, we're going to try and hopefully do justice to about a third of your life, right? It's 10 years worth of information, but we're super excited to have you. So thank you and welcome to our show.
Thank you. I'm glad to be here.
So now you and Melissa, you guys go back quite a ways, right?
Yeah, we've known each other since 7th grade. And Sabrina and I, we were the younger ones in our class. So we were probably 12, 13 when we met?
Yeah. No, oh my gosh. I think I was we were still 13 freshman year starting, weren't we? So we would have been.
Yeah.
Yeah, we were with the September and October birthdays. Yeah. So in 7th grade, I think maybe like 11.
Yeah. We were babies.
Yeah.
And so I that's why when we got this form, I was super excited because I've been following you on Instagram and your story just fascinates me. Here on the show, we talk a lot about the different types of pivots people make in their lives, forced changes, life-changing moments, intentional changes, and in just this form that you've filled out for us, you've like hit almost all of them. And so I think it would be really great for our listeners to see how one extraordinary woman has just powered through all of it and just is living the life. And so that's what excites me most about having you on the show.
Yay, that's so fun. It's really nice to kind of turn what a lot of people would perceive as tragedy into something that's like positive, because a lot of people, depending on what version of my social media I'm allowing someone to see, like people either feel really sorry for me or really jealous of me, or they just don't know how to feel.
Yeah, all those emotions definitely can be elicited in looking at your profile, but knowing you, I think it's so fascinating. So I'm really excited to share your story. And it all started with, I would say, your early career. So can you tell us a little bit about your early career?
Yeah, so growing up in like the small town, that we grew up in, you basically just want to find a way to transition into something bigger, I think is kind of just the way I always felt. Like I just knew I wanted to get out of that town. I wanted to do something really meaningful and something exciting. And so I was always drawn to broadcast news. I went to a private broadcasting school right out of high school. I graduated early from high school because I just was very motivated to get out. I graduated at 16 and I moved basically to Southern California to go to school. And then I was lucky enough to really advance in my career very early on. So I was already working in radio and television when I was about 19. So I moved around the country a lot. In broadcast news, you have to really start in a tiny market in order to prove yourself, but also, get the necessary experience to be able to be trusted to do a live broadcast. Because again, anything that comes out of your mouth can be held, liable. You can be sued. The station could be, get in really big trouble. And trusting a young person with that kind of freedom is very difficult. And so you have to start in a smaller market where essentially less people are listening when you do screw up, because you will. And so I did that for a few years, and then I actually ended up at Fox News in Los Angeles after working in Las Vegas and a bunch of other places doing news. And so I was doing television and radio for Fox News out of New York. I would kind of go back and forth between LA and New York. I would travel to Nashville and a lot of other places for just various news things that were happening, whether it was like natural disasters or entertainment stories. It really was a really exciting job because I got to do a lot of things that most people, certainly my age, had never done. And I just was able to kind of get this perspective on the world that was like, okay, when I'm not working 12 hours a day, I really want to get out here and actually see the world and experience the things that I'm interviewing everyone else about. And so I just started kind of getting burned out on work, and it all sort of culminated in, I mean, I don't know how much, you guys believe about sort of, basically like stress affecting your physical health. And, I mean, I ended up getting cancer.
We're huge believers.
Mhm.
So.
Yeah. So it's, I mean, there's really, I mean, obviously there's like family history and whatever, but to be in my early 20s and be diagnosed with cancer was just such a crazy experience. But it was almost immediate that I knew that it was something to do with my lifestyle, something to do with the stress, something to do with the way that I was living my life or not living my life.
Mhm.
Well, let's
And
talk about that for a minute.
okay.
How were you living your life at this point? So now you made it in, you've, hustled in the small town markets and then made it into Fox News for New York. Like, what was your day like then?
Well, so I was based in Los Angeles, and I would, basically have what we called live shots all day. And you have one at the top of every hour and one at the bottom of every hour. And then in between that, you're writing scripts, you're trying to make calls, you're digging for stories. I mean, it really, nowadays, of course, you say any network news name and people scoff because of whatever their political affiliation is. And of course, I am not politically aligned with Fox. But I was covering, a wide array of stories, and all that being said, like, you really have to kind of pound the pavement. I was working, I would say it would depend, sometimes my first live shot would be at 5 a.m. Sometimes my last live shot would be at 1 a.m.
Wow.
And with award shows, you have to be on the red carpet interviewing the celebrities, which sounds very glamorous, but when you're in high heels and you've got blisters on your feet that are bleeding, because not only am I the on-air person, I'm pulling the cable, I'm plugging in the XLRs, I'm testing the audio, I'm setting up the amps. Like, I'm my own audio engineer and also helping with like the camera setup. And so it's just a grueling process. And it's not just, the Oscars or the Grammys or the awards that you might see on TV. There was one a week, there's the SAG Awards and Golden Globes and just so many different things you have to do. And so you have to kind of put forth this facade of glamour. And again, like, I have to be fully done up, my hair, my makeup, my gown, my heels, and carrying like a 50-pound Pelican case full of gear.
Wow.
So,
Wow. That's a lot. That sounds like a workout just in itself.
it's crazy. But here's the thing. It's like, when you're that age, we let people take advantage of us, right? We don't know that it's okay to say, this is too much for one person. This isn't healthy. I need sleep. I'm exhausted. I was taking Adderall. I was taking, I was drinking a lot, like, of wine to like calm down from the night to go to bed. Then I was waking up and drinking coffee, taking Adderall, like, and sometimes they would give it to us because, like, there was really no, like, I was just abusing my body. I was doing whatever it took to be up when I needed to be up and to sleep when I needed to sleep. And
not doing it naturally, just doing what you could to support yourself.
Oh, we absolutely, with stimulant. Well, yeah, of course, with stimulants. I mean, there's just no way. And if anyone in the industry says that they don't, they're lying. And it's not because, but it's because of the demand. Because the second that, and I think at this time I was maybe like 23, but at that time, you're not going to walk away from $120,000 a year job.
Mm-hmm.
Like, all my friends are waitresses. Like, everyone is struggling, and it's like, you can't even complain because how dare you? Like, you're in this position where everyone is. First of all, it's fun, right? Because everyone sees you on TV and you're, and it's like what I set out to do. And then you get all of the family dynamics of like people pressuring you, like, because your parents are so excited or your friends are so happy for you. And then you have your bosses who, the second that you say, listen, I need a break, I feel sick. And this is when it started with the cancer stuff, is like, I started just feeling like something was wrong. I didn't have enough energy. I was getting sick all the time. And, once you say, hey, I need a break, HR will just send you like a list of resumes from people that have applied for your job that day.
Wait,
Like,
so HR will tell you, hey, you could be sick, but here are all the applications.
well, I mean, that's, I don't want to put Fox on blast, but the people that I worked for were they had no qualms about explaining and being very direct about the fact that, listen, if you don't want this job or this job is too stressful for you, it's not going to be us making it less stressful. It's going to be us replacing you with someone younger, prettier, or more, down to work every holiday and work, 15 hours a day. And that's just, I don't know if that's how it is now, but that's how it was when I was there. And again, it's not just Fox, it's everyone. It's all of them. I have friends at CNN, ABC, like that. This is just, it's really how it is. It's almost like an athlete, like they pay you well so that you cannot say no.
Well, when you're talking about that, I'm just thinking, in your travels, I know you went to over 70 countries and you've met journalists all over the world. Was it the same culture with other journalists, with foreign journalists?
Foreign journalists, no, because as we know, America is the only country that values, work life over home life and family and personal goals. America, I mean, really, like, people who don't spend a lot of time outside of this country have no idea the freedom that comes with living in a society where people don't ask you what you do within the first 5 seconds of a conversation, because it doesn't matter. What you do isn't who you are in other places. And I think that's why I fell so deeply in love with travel, because I was so tired of always being the one in the room that had, the coolest job, let's say, and it wasn't even that my job was that cool, but it was as soon as anyone found out what I did, whether I wanted to be, the entertainment for that party or that evening or that dinner or lunch or whatever, I end up fielding hundreds of questions about, well, who have you interviewed and what was that like? And that's so cool. And you don't want to like be a bummer. You don't want to tell people like, look, I think there's something like really wrong with me and I don't even like my job anymore. And I know you're like stoked on me telling you about it, but this sucks and I'm struggling.
That makes a lot of sense. Do you think that you, it doesn't sound like it right now, but at the time, had you internalized, I'm a reporter and like that's your whole identity?
I think so. I think because it's the only thing I'd ever done. I always joke with my friends now whenever I'm, freelancing or looking for work or whatever. I'm like, I have no skills. Like all I do is just like be on camera. And, it's just so funny because I've really never done anything else. And of course, all of the training, like I obviously can write and I can, produce and do a lot of other things, but it is really funny because yes, I am. I mean, I'm like a caricature of a little like reporter doll, it's just all I've ever done. And so absolutely, I think it took a long time for me to not start every introduction with like, oh, well, I used to be, a reporter, because I don't know, I feel like there was such sort of acclaim, and also it helped me feel better, I think, about like quitting my job and starting to travel when I could have kind of an ace in the hole of like, oh, well, don't worry, I'm not like a loser. Like, this is what I used to do. But isn't that such a negative way to look at it? Like, and it helped traveling. It wasn't until I started traveling that I dropped that part of it. Now, the people that I've met within the last few years have no idea what I used to do for work.
Wow. Because I mean, that's going to be difficult, right? So you're going through and you're being told, look, if you don't want this job, there's so many people out here who want your job, like figure it out, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's basically what they were telling you.
Yeah, they're not even saying figure it out. They're just saying don't bring this up again unless it's to tender your resignation.
Mm. Wow. So then how did you manage to go through that? Because I mean, how did you even get the diagnosis?
So this is and it's almost embarrassing, like looking back at it. And I will preface this, by saying that the way that I handled this was so wrong. So anyone listening, like, this is just the what not to do version of like dealing with this kind of thing. And I think, growing up, like I'm, the child of immigrants, and it was just like this like fake it till you make it, don't complain. Like, I never took a day off school. Like, my parent, you know, there was no room for complaining or for needing help or for any of that in my life. That just wasn't a thing. And so when I started feeling sick, I was like embarrassed, and I was worried that I was going to get fired, or that something was going to happen, like even more negatively. So actually at the time I was in London, I had traveled, I take like a week off, and I was traveling with my best friend Haley, and we were on the train, and I passed out. I just completely fell, and I was unconscious, and I had to go to the hospital. And we had been drinking, so I was like, oh, I'm just, you know, I'm hungover, I'm dehydrated, or whatever it is. And it wasn't. It just started, more things started happening. And so finally, when I got back, I went and got tests run, and they came back and said that I had cancer, and that, you know, it would be fine. Like, there was a lot of treatment options. I was super healthy and young. But I didn't even tell Fox. I didn't tell anyone. I didn't tell my parents. I didn't tell anyone. So for the first few months, I just was like, well, maybe I can just get through them to tell anyone, because I don't want to. I was afraid they wouldn't renew my contract if they thought I might be sick or get sick again. It was bizarre. I mean, as I say it now, I'm like, what the hell? Like, what kind of backwards like thinking? But at the time, I was so conditioned to just feel like I wasn't worth anything if I wasn't healthy and I wasn't able. And so I went through the most grueling, you know, chemo and radiation process. And the reason that Fox found out, which this is so awful, is I was on steroids and I gained a lot of weight. And it was the kind of weight where it's mostly water weight, but you get really puffy. And it comes on very quickly. And it was very hard to hide, and especially when I was doing on-air work. So basically I was low-key told, like, hey, what's going on? Do we need to get you like a nutritionist or a gym membership? Like, what? This isn't work. This isn't okay. Like, you can't just gain a bunch of weight like this.
So the only reason that they reached out to you was because you didn't look as good on camera anymore. Is that what I'm hearing?
I mean, that's my take. I'm sure. I mean, who knows? Like, you know, whatever. But essentially, yes, I eventually had to just be like, here's what's going on. I can't just go on a diet. It's not going to fix it. And then of course I started losing my hair. So I had to cut my hair short, and you're not supposed to change your appearance drastically. When you're, you know, on air, you actually, a lot of times have a contract that stipulates if you can, you know, be tan or not, get highlights or not, cut your hair or not. And I had to cut my hair short, not like really short, but just to kind of hide the fact that I was losing some of it. And so the whole process was just ridiculous. So I ended up telling my job, and then I told some friends, and then I told my family. And then
how many months between you actually revealing this stuff?
Oh, maybe 4.
4 months.
4 months.
What was that like, keeping that to yourself for 4 months?
It was incredibly painful and scary, but I thought that that was the right thing to do. I just thought that I didn't want to burden anyone with my issues. And at the time, you know, I was afraid that someone would tell Fox. Like, that was the big thing, is I knew my family would step in. I knew my mom would just get on the phone with like Roger Ailes if she had to, and be like, you need to give her time off. Like, this is, you know, I think I knew that my people would take care of me and force me to stop. And I was scared that would mean the end of my career. And so I just wouldn't allow it until I physically couldn't anymore. I just couldn't explain away the weight. I couldn't explain away the hair. I couldn't explain away the fatigue. And also that was when I was like, actually, F this job, like, because I'm sick now, and I might not get, and that's when the diagnosis kind of changed, the prognosis changed, it spread. I ended up with a form of like blood cancer that was a lot more different and harder to treat. So that's when it got a little dicey, and we were talking about stages, and at one point, my best friend and I, the one I was in London with at the time, she was like, all right, how many credit cards do you have? What's the maximum balance on all of them? She's like, if we're going out, let's just go for it. Like, where do you want to go in the world? What do you want to do? Let's max everything out, and who cares? Like, just leave your debt with you and it's fine. And I remember that conversation of thinking, like, if that's what I would do if I was really gonna not make it, and now I'm sick and weak and I can't enjoy anything and I can't keep food down, like, what a bummer. Like, what a bummer to go and max out all my cards and have this like end of life kind of thing and really not even be in a position to enjoy it. And that's when I was like, all right, that's enough. Like, this is a sign. I think that the reason that I'm not getting better is because I haven't changed my life. I think that the reason that this is getting worse is because I'm going at this all wrong. And the second that I just surrendered to it and just decided, if I get better, my life is going to change. That's it. Because in between the first diagnosis and then when it turned out that it had spread to my blood, I should have quit my job. Like, I should have stopped working, but I took a break and then I went back. And my friends will all say, you know, a lot of my friends are like very like woo woo, you know, and they'll say that, well, you know, you had to get sick again for you to understand that you had to change your path. And, you know, and that's what I actually believe now, is that I was going to keep getting sick until I made a big change. And once I went back the second time and got really sick, and then just made the decision to actually do the things I would do if I thought I was dying, but wait until I was healthy to do them, that everything would fall into place. And it did.
Yeah, I remember seeing social media posts of you just selling almost everything that you had, because this was something that you had wanted to do. And I think that that is such a huge risk, but understanding the story behind it, it's very, very empowering. So how long did it take for you to make the decision of like, F this, like I'm going to go and explore the world, to you actually doing it?
Well, it would have been the second that I got, you know, my last PET scan and the cancer cells were, you know, going down and my body was recovering and the medication was working, I would have left that day. But I was under a contract, and the way that it works is if I would have quit before the end of my contract, I have to pay them back for whatever time that I left early.
Mm-hmm.
So I basically just kind of tried to time it out to where I would be ready to go by the end of my contract, which at that time was about a year. So I basically put a plan in motion to start saving all my money, selling all my stuff, still working, still earning really well. Because again, I was really lucky. I mean, I was earning very well. I paid off my school loans. I still lived, you know, below my means, because that's what, you know, one thing my parents always instilled in me. And that's was the joke about the credit card stuff, because I never carry a balance on any of my cards. And I mean, I use them for points because I'm a travel hacker. So I have a ton of cards with maybe $20,000 like limits on all of them, but I don't carry a balance on any. So, I mean, we really could have had a time. I'm sure Haley's like slightly low key irritated that we didn't do it, but so I've always been really, really good with saving. And the thing that's a bummer is that because I earned so well, my medical bills were almost $100,000.
Oh, wow.
Out of pocket. And it was so funny because my mom was just like, quit your job now so that you can get like free healthcare, or, you know, what, because she said all the money in your savings is gone now. Like, that's it. You have to pay for all this medical and then you're going to be healthy and you won't have money to do anything. Like, that sucks. And it did suck, but I was in a better position than most because I had the money to pay the bills versus losing everything like so many Americans face. So I was able to pay off all the debt, pay down the medical, and then still save money. And then that's why I was selling everything to get out in front of it. So yeah, it was about a year. So on May, let's see, I quit in March 2014, and then I left on my trip in May of that same year.
Sabrina, had you not gotten sick Would you still be a reporter? Would you still be in that grind?
I think what has happened in this country over the last few years would have pushed me in another direction, just because the media as a whole is just such a bummer right now. And it's so hard to know who is being authentic or disingenuous. And I'm just so frustrated with all of it as a whole. So I don't think so. I think that the times would have kind of pushed me in a different direction, but I might have stayed in media. Like I see myself potentially that I would have gone into like a documentary place, or podcasting, or, something that wasn't specifically news based. But I probably would have run myself into the ground. Like, I certainly wouldn't have backed off the feeling like I needed to work 12 hours a day, because that's what you're told to do.
Mm-hmm. Well, thank you for sharing that. I mean, there was just what an experience. And so it sounds like after you were able to get all your ducks in a row that you wanted to feel comfortable, you said you took your trip. What trip was that?
So I didn't know, actually. It was kind of my, like, the death trip that I thought I was going to take. Like,
the way that you titled that.
I don't know. I figured, like, because, and the thing is too, with the type of cancer that I had, it was basically for sure going to come back. That's like what they said. But it was this weird, do you ever have those moments where it's like someone tells you something and you just know emphatically that it's not true? Mm-hmm. I just knew, like, in my being, that if I just did the right things, the things that I hadn't been doing, if I just, got myself in a position where I was healthier and feeling better, I just knew I'd be okay. I just knew it. And so, but because, of course, all the doctors are like, listen, like, don't get married, don't plan on having kids, like, you're not going to be around very long, like that. It was, it wasn't nothing. It was certainly very scary, but I was just like, no, I'll be good. So that's when I decided I didn't really make any long-term plans, I guess, I didn't believe that I'd get sick again, but I still didn't want anyone else's world to come crashing down if I did. So I did kind of remove myself from everyone and just decided that I would travel solo for at least a year. And then I would have a PET scan in 6 months, and then another one in 6 months after that, and just see what it was. And if I was still stage 1, or, at least under stage 3, I would continue. So I kind of was doing it in stages of, like, every 6 months I'd get a scan, and then I'd travel for another 6 months, and so on and so forth. Because I wasn't trying to be reckless. Like, it wasn't, if I did get sick again, I would come back and seek treatment. But I also was just hoping that whatever therapy I was doing on my own would keep the cancer at bay.
So what was that experience like? You're traveling, and this time you're not traveling for work, right?
Right.
You're not there as a journalist. What was that experience like?
It was awesome, because I still, of course, am very inquisitive and interested in people and places and things. And I could have these sort of casual long form interviews essentially with people, but it was like for the radio show in my head, because I could just ask everybody everything, and I didn't have to worry about, what I could substantiate, or it just didn't matter. All the stories were just stories. And now I can write about these places, and I can tell people about these places from a perspective of just being there, and I don't have to worry about, all the different rules associated with storytelling with a network, I guess is what I'm saying. So now I'll go to a place, and they'll tell me about the struggles of the place, or what their biggest issues are politically, or what the human rights issues are. And it's just fascinating to me. I still love essentially interviewing people and finding out about these places, and then of course enjoying myself just in life. I discovered so many things about myself within the first year of traveling. I've always been really into like board sports, but I never had time to do any. And I certainly never had time to go to the beach, even though I lived in Los Angeles. And it wasn't until I started traveling that I discovered my love for surfing. And now surfing is such a huge part of my life now that I never would have even thought that that would be something that I did. I mean, I'm 34, and I didn't start doing any of this stuff until I was almost 30. Like, now I wakeboard, I kite surf, I surf, like it's just bizarre. Like, I do all these things. Like, I skateboard. I'm a 34-year-old woman, and I'm like skateboarding down Manhattan Beach. Like, what is wrong with, but anyway, whatever.
I don't think there's anything wrong with that. That sounds like you're actually doing things that bring you joy. And if getting on a board does that, power to you. I feel like I'm going to fall every single time I try.
I do fall.
Yeah, you do. And you pick yourself back up and you look fabulous doing it, I'm sure. So I know that there's plenty of people out there that are like, wow, to travel the world and to see the things that you've seen. How did you do that? I know that you had mentioned paying an exorbitant amount in medical bills. So, how were you able to financially kind of, keep yourself afloat while traveling over 70 countries?
Well, I was really lucky again. Like, I earned very well. So even after paying the medical debt, I still had, I don't know, maybe like $30,000 in savings. Plus I cashed out my 401k, which, I don't recommend. My mom's still mad at me. She literally like still brings it up.
The time power of money. Like, I get it.
I know. Yeah. Yes. But then I always tell her, like, listen, I had all the money in the world. I had a ton in savings, and then I got sick and it went away. So listen. So anyway, yeah, I mean, the travel hacking thing is huge. I mean, listen, I'm not going to pretend that it's not expensive and it's not hard. I really was in a good position because of how well that I earned, and just how good I am with managing and budgeting. And also, I'm very, very low maintenance. Like, I don't do like hair or nails or like, I don't care about any brand. Like, I have no brand loyalty. I don't care about fancy hotels. I've never complained about a bed in my life. Like, I don't, if there's hot water, great. If not, it's fine. Like, so I'm not staying in places that are expensive. I'm staying in hostels. I'm couch surfing. I'm renting, a flat for like a month that I have to go and like get a cooler because it doesn't have a refrigerator, or, stuff like that. So a lot of the credit card point stuff, like the travel hacking, comes into play, where I open and close a lot of credit cards a year to get the bonus miles to fly. But you have to be really careful because it can affect your credit. So you have to be really smart about that. But I'm good. Like, I think I still have a credit rating of like 817, and I haven't had a real job in 6 years.
That's amazing. And I remember you actually, didn't you publish a book about travel hacks and how people can travel the world kind of like a, really, really inexpensively?
On a budget? Yeah, I did. I don't really promote it anymore because it's so, all that stuff changes so much. So most of the information that I have, and it's an ebook, which is why it was an ebook, because I thought, okay, well, this will be good for like a couple of years. And it was a good source of income. I sold it for like, I think $9 or $10, and I made, I don't know, maybe, I can't think about how, like, enough per month kind of to live in the lifestyle that I did. But I stopped promoting it because a lot of the apps that I talked about are non-existent. Like, everything just changes so much. And I'm not tech savvy enough to be able to update it in a real way to make it still valuable for people. So at some point I may revamp it, but yeah, that was a good source of income. I had a travel blog with a lot of ads on it that I would get money from. I was involved in like affiliate marketing, which is basically like, if I talk about the surf sunscreen that I use and link it in a blog and someone buys it, I get money from that, which is just like the simplest way to explain it. So I did a lot of stuff like that. I was growing a travel brand. I was moving into the consulting space. I wanted to start working for companies as essentially like a scout. I was creating a business that would allow for me to go to a place and make sure it had all the things that someone would want. Let's say you guys wanted to put on like a wellness retreat. and you were thinking about doing it in El Salvador. Well, you don't want to take a bunch of people to a country or a place that you can't guarantee, yes, there's hot water, yes, the food is good, yes, it's clean, all these things. So I would go there in advance and be kind of like what we call a fixer. So go in and just make sure everything is as it is, and all those things. So I was moving toward that, and then unfortunately I had another like catastrophe happen in my life with a relationship that I was in. I don't know if you want to get into that or not.
That is part of what we couldn't eliminate anything of your story here, because you really have had so many of these different pivots. So yeah, so you have this basically forced pivot is kind of what we were thinking. Tell us about that.
Yeah, so basically, and then as far as like just while I was traveling, I was writing a lot too. So I freelance write, and that kind of was helping. But I needed at that point to have like an actual, like a better income to continue traveling the way I wanted. So yeah, I was working on moving into that type of travel consulting space with like the book, and then, the blogging and seminars on like how to travel hack. And it all kind of blew up because I lost the ability to use my own name as a brand, because I was dating someone at the time who unfortunately was just in a bad place in his life, and was using, drugs and alcohol recreationally, but just too much. And I had been traveling for 6 months, and I came back, and he lived in Los Angeles. And so I would stay with him when I was traveling back in the States, and he would come and visit me. Like we went to Bali together. We did South America. He came to Copenhagen. So it was a relationship that was rooted like in travel, but I was always kind of gone. And so I didn't really know his home life, his friends, his family. I was very separate from all of that. And I was just the person who would kind of come in and come out. And so everyone was always kind of very suspicious of me to begin with, just because I was never really there, or he would be flying off and quitting his job to come travel with me for like a month. And that wasn't chill for anyone, apparently. So, the fastest, easiest way I can explain it is, unfortunately, one of his roommates died from an overdose, a drug overdose, accidental drug overdose. And my boyfriend at the time was there at the time, and he almost died. So they had been partying, and so my boyfriend at the time was found like unconscious on the floor. He had been passed out for a long time. He ended up with an anoxic brain injury, which affects your short-term memory and a lot of other sort of cognitive issues. Like I said, his roommate actually ended up dying. And I was in California at the time. I was actually up in Visalia, and I drove back down, and it was a really complicated, confusing experience, because for whatever reason, the blame of that was put on me, because I was sort of the outsider, and no one knew me, and everyone insisted that I was there at the time that this all happened, even though, it doesn't, the specifics aren't even really important anymore. But what happened was, my partner, he was in the hospital for a month, and his family was just very angry, and they wanted me out of the situation, and they were grieving, and the family of the man who died were grieving, and they decided that the best way to get me to either distract me or get me out of the situation was to post explicit videos that they found of me on my boyfriend's phone. So,
the family did it?
It's really, at this point, I pursued legal action. I hired like a digital forensics team to go in and figure out who did what. And at the end of the day, I don't know. I mean, I know that someone got whatever was on his phone, created a fake Facebook account, added like 1,000 of my friends, like, and family, and then sent the video as a private message to all of these people. So, you know, my family got it, my colleagues, business associates, and it was, you know, it was graphic and explicit and clearly showed my face. It was very obviously me. And it was devastating at the time. I mean, it really was. And of course, my boyfriend is in the hospital fighting for his life. He's on dialysis. We have no idea if he's going to recover, if he's going to remember anything. And it was just this horrible experience of him not being able to help me, his family denying that they have anything to do. It was just this insane, like, circus of hell that I just couldn't figure out how to crawl out of. And so I didn't know what to do. I was trying to be there for him, and also try to, like, recover and preserve my business and my name and all these things at the same time. And it was just too many things. And eventually I just pulled everything. I pulled all of my online, like, social media. I pulled my website. There was no way that I would be able to recover from that. And this was, like, before all the Me Too stuff. It wasn't, you know, it wasn't where I could come out just, like, as a victim of, like, hey, this happened to me. And it was wrong and it shouldn't affect anything to do with my professional life. But that's just not how things work. And so I basically stopped doing anything online as far as, like, monetizing anything. Like, I still use my name for my social media, but I stopped blogging. I stopped because, and again, the people associated with what happened just took it as a game, you know. And so anytime I would post something, they would troll it. They got, I don't know, maybe like 30 people to go and write these, like, ridiculous reviews on my company site. And just, they were just very, very young, very immature, and grieving. And grief makes people do horrible things. And I think now they probably regret it. At this point, I'm just not, I'm not in a position to pursue anything more. And that's what sucks is, you know, the victim in these cases, it's not even illegal, like, what they did technically. And so it's just really, really hard to pursue. And I just had to kind of decide that I wasn't going to let it break me, and I was never going to get justice, and I needed to just move on. So I cut all ties with, you know, my ex and his family and all the people. And I took about a year to regroup and figure out how I would start working again, you know, because even when you Googled my name, it would come up. I mean, maybe now it's like the second page on a Google search, but it's still there. So I still kind of have to be really cautious about things I apply for.
The scandals
Sorry?
there, or the scandal, or the actual footage that was leaked?
I stopped. I made a deal with myself to stop looking. But I believe that maybe it's just screen grabs of Facebook posts, or I created, at the time I just needed an outlet. I needed to tell kind of my story. I needed to take ownership of it again. So I actually did a podcast about it, where I talked about everything that happened. And I had friends come in and record sort of versions of, like, reading out what the messages that were coming in and what was said to me. Yeah, I probably have a clip of it if you want to include it in this. I can send to you, but it was really cathartic, actually, to do. And so I think possibly the podcast would come up, which that would be fine. But yeah, I don't know. I just stopped looking for it after a while. It's been 3 years now since that happened. So I've kind of healed from it. And I just feel like, whatever, like, I almost died. Like, after you almost die, nothing is really that hard to get over. And, like, okay, whatever. So, like, my, you know, body's, like, on the internet, whatever, everyone's is mostly. And it's like, I just have to stand by the fact that, like, I'm a very sexual person. I have these long distance relationships. I constantly send content back and forth. That's just how I maintain relationships, you know, with people while I'm traveling. And I'm not ashamed of that at all. And that's like a big part of who I am. And it's kind of like a friend of mine who's awesome and like always just really is really good at minimizing things that seem big and terrifying, said, you know, that's like you sending, you know, nudes or like sexting and like that kind of stuff, like to some people that would be like eliminating kissing in a relationship. Like just because it's not normal to people or someone shames it, like if people derive pleasure from, you know, kissing their partner, like you can liken it to something as simple as that. Like it's a part of the way that I, you know, interact with the people I'm intimate with, I guess is the way to describe it. So when I kind of peel it back in that way, like, of course it's awful that it went out to people that shouldn't have seen it and without my consent and all those things. But at the end of the day, like I didn't post it. And so the fact that it's out there and it was meant for one person is a bummer, but at the end of the day, whatever, like I looked great.
You've always looked great. I mean, well, if you, this is going to, her picture is going to be up on our website, not the illicit one, obviously. Go check her out. She's gorgeous. So, I mean, so you were earning money by being a consulting or a travel consultant and writing. And now with that being stripped, I mean, what were you doing at that point? I know that writing is something or journalism is something you really enjoyed. So what happened after that?
I really probably, again, like I overcorrected. I probably could have let things die off and revamped some of that stuff. But I don't know, most of the people you deal with in the travel community, like people planning all this stuff, they're mostly men. And I don't know, I just felt like, okay, the first thing someone's going to do when I'm offering any type of service is Google me. And when my name is the first thing, you know, and I have it's not a very common name. It's certainly when you Google my full name, everything about me is what's going to come up. It's not going to be someone else with my name. So, I probably could have tried to get back in that consulting space and doing the travel stuff, but I just wasn't prepared to be able to have to defend or explain what they were seeing. And when you're dealing with, you know, a lot of the stuff at the time, the real money is in like church type retreats, like that type of stuff. So I was like, this is
That's
not, I
interesting.
mean, there's no way, you
Yeah,
know, like
you're going to miss that
Carol
market.
from First Assembly is going to be like, so we Googled you. So yeah, I basically started just writing freelance. It's not fun. It's not exciting. No one's gonna, you know, that's what I tell people, like, oh, I'm a writer. And they say, oh, I want to like, send me something you've written. Like no one wants to read an article that I wrote about like the effects of video games on a developing child brain, you know, but that's what pays. Mm-hmm. So I essentially go online and pick and choose articles that need to be written or, you know, company like advertorials, listicles, that kind of stuff. It's really, I'm not passionate about it at all, but it pays whatever. I mean, I don't have bills, but it gives me money to travel and to pay for things that I need to. So it's fine. I'm bummed that I kind of missed out on what I thought was going to be the next career I was going to have. And unfortunately, I still just don't feel ready to put myself back out there in a way of like launching an actual business. But I can, you know, for a while I was ghostwriting, so just under a different name so that no one could search for me. Mm-hmm. But like I said, it'll actually be 3 years this month that since the overdose. And then everything happened kind of around Halloween is when they posted everything online. So yeah, it'll be 3 years. So we'll see what ends up happening if I go back into any of that.
Would you say that part of you just wanting to move on as quickly as you could and just abandoning, or not abandoning, but, you know, saying, hey, I'm done with this project because of all of those circumstances. Do you think part of that has to do with the lens that you're looking at life through of just, hey, I almost died?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely, I think that was like the saving grace of of being able to not have that like ruin me. I mean, I know I have friends who, you know, we all have friends whose nudes have been leaked, right? I mean, there's websites dedicated to it, which is just so disgusting. But you know, it's like I have friends who, you know, just like a topless photo was posted, and they, you know, people talk about wanting to like end their lives. Like, what? Like, let me be clear. This was not a photo. It was a video, and it was explicit and graphic. So like, there was no like tiptoeing around the fact that this was extreme. But for whatever reason, I just was like, yeah, I almost died, and this isn't going to kill me, so whatever. Like,
I love your attitude, and I know that you still traveled even after that. So okay, so you pick up the pieces after the end of this relationship. Then what happens after that? Where do you go? Where do you travel to?
yeah, that was such a thing too. It was like, because of course I was in love with the guy still. And there's that aspect of it, because he didn't hurt me. He didn't do anything. He had such a horrible memory issue that he would call me and not know why we weren't together anymore. Not understand what happened, not know what his family, not know anything.
Oh, that
It
had to
was
be
like,
rough.
oh my God. So the fact that I started traveling again, honestly, was just like, I need to be in a place where my phone can't ring. Like, I need to be far away where I'm not getting someone that walks up to me at, you know, Save Mart and says like, oh, hey, I saw that video. I'm really sorry. I'm like, well, you didn't have to watch it. Like, you know, it's just like some dude I haven't talked to since ninth grade. It's just like, hey, so that sucks. So I just needed to get away. I needed to just be gone, because that's my saving grace. Like my safe space is the world, like outside of my little bubble, where, because everywhere I go, I think that's what drew me back to traveling. Is when I first started traveling, I would tell people that I was like a waitress whenever I was traveling, because I hated having to like dance monkey dance about my job. And so I think I always loved the fact that I could be just completely anonymous in a new place, and I could go back to traveling and nobody knew that, you know, I had just been through this horrible thing. Nobody knew that everybody in my close knit group of everyone had seen something that you would never even like send your best friend. So yeah, I just needed a minute to just be gone again. And heal. And I think that's what worked when I was sick. And it's what worked when my heart was sick, you know, when my whole being had been like shaken up. I mean, I was like mourning the death of a partner that I never even got to break up with or end things with, on top of mourning the loss of my second career that I thought I was going to have. Being able to just like look my friends and family in the face without knowing that they don't know how to talk to me anymore, you know? And so it was a good way for me to feel like me again.
Wow. And it sounds like the last decade of your life has really just had a lot of different experiences and lots of different changes, some of them intentional, some of them not. So thank you so much for sharing all of that with us.
Yeah, you're welcome.
We do have some questions that we ask all of our guests. And so I'm going to ask you the first question, which is, reflecting back, what would you tell your younger self?
Oh man, I think I would say that chasing money, chasing a career, chasing a life that I thought I wanted because it was one I didn't have, is just not worth it. Like, I wish that I would have traveled first and worked later. Like the young people in other countries that do like a gap year, there's nothing more educational to me than traveling. There is nothing that cures racism and indifference like traveling. There is nothing that expands your mind in a way. And the younger you are when you do it, the better, because you're still fresh, you know? When I went to places, I would see like these kids experiencing these things, and I would already have all these preconceived notions of what this meant or that. And it took almost like 2 years of traveling full time to just be able to break that down and actually receive the information that I was getting without filtering it through all of my adult leanings,
Mhm.
that are put upon you by other people, you realize. And so, yeah, I would just say, I would tell myself to travel, and that money wouldn't make me happy. Because I think growing up, like kind of struggling, and my parents worked their asses off, but we never really had what we want, we had what we needed. We didn't have what we wanted. And so, my brother and I always had to make deals with each other of like who could get what. And we both hustled. I mean, we like, kids would be selling like candy bars and stuff in school for like sports, and we'd just be doing it for like pocket money. Like we'd go and sell like sodas and candy bars, like just to buy the things we wanted. And sometimes that was like a cheerleading uniform or karate class, or whatever it was. Like we would hustle and do it ourselves. And so I think I always just wanted to achieve a level of success where I could just buy whatever I wanted, and I never had to struggle. And no one would make fun of me for like the clothes that I had or the car that my parents drove. And that was so ingrained in me. And I wish I could have just skipped it. I wish I could have skipped that whole time of my life where I was just killing myself so I could get a job where I earned enough money and then had to spend it all on medical bills anyway.
Oh, that's an amazing, impactful answer. Yeah, that's really good. Thank you.
You're welcome.
The second question is, okay, so looking forward, what is one wish you have for yourself on your current journey?
I just want to be happy. I just want to be healthy. And I think I'm in control of that. I really do. I think that as long as I stay true to the path that I'm on, I think that my body will respond in kind. I think that I just want what I've been setting out to find, which is just minimalism and just being happy with what I have. And I think I'm on the right track.
I think so.
It certainly sounds like it. Thank you so much for your time and for sharing your stories with us. They were
Absolutely
incredible. That's it for this episode. We had a great time sharing and exploring Sabrina's journey with you. What part of her story resonated with you most? Tell us at our Facebook group, Pivotal Moments HQ. We want to thank our producer and music director, Ron Johnson. This has been an Astronomicus DMR production. Thank you for listening. Remember, it's never too late and you're right on time.